It's been 3 hours. You told yourself you wouldn't look at your phone again, that you'd let it go. But your hand moves without thinking, unlocking the screen, checking the chat thread that's still blue on your side and grey on his. Nothing. You scroll up, reading the last message you sent. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't too much. Just a soft, honest question. But the silence after it feels like a punch to the chest. You replay the last time you saw him. The way he looked at you. How deeply you connected. How you swore this felt different. And yet now, he's drifting. Like you were never enough to hold his focus. And the thought creeps in, why does he stay with the girl who plays games, but leaves the one who gave him everything? You were patient, kind. You listened when he didn't even know how to speak. You gave him safety, loyalty, understanding. You were the right one, and still, he left. And it stings worse knowing who he stayed with after. The woman who made him chase, who ignored his messages, who never really saw him. But here's the part that no one wants to say out loud. Sometimes a man isn't ready for healthy love. He doesn't know how to sit still in peace, so he chases chaos and calls it passion. He doesn't recognize safety as love because all he's ever known is survival. He stays with the woman who wounds him because it feels familiar, and leaves the one who could heal him because it feels foreign. So it's not that you weren't enough, it's that your presence didn't match his wound. And now you're sitting there, holding all the love you were ready to give, wondering what you did wrong, when the truth is, you were simply too right for a man, still loyal to his dysfunction. And the moment you realize that, you stop blaming yourself. You stop chasing silence. You stop breaking your heart to make him whole. Because you finally understand it was never your job to prove you were worthy of staying. You try to be the calm one, the patient one. You give him space when he gets distant. You don't ask for too much, even when your heart is aching. You tell yourself that being understanding will make him see your worth, but deep down it hurts. Because the more you love him, the further he pulls, and the more you try to prove you're the right one, the more invisible you feel. You're not crazy, you're not asking for too much, you're just tired of giving your all and still being the one he leaves, while he stays loyal to someone who gives him so little. Why is it that the woman who gives the most often ends up with the least? Why does the one who listens, stays loyal, forgives quickly, and loves deeply get left behind, while the one who plays hot and cold keeps him hooked? It doesn't make sense until you see the pattern. Men who haven't healed are drawn to what feels familiar, not what feels healthy. If chaos was his childhood, then chaos feels like home. So when he meets a woman who brings peace, he confuses it with boredom. And the mistake many women make? Believing that loving harder will convince him to stay. That if you're more understanding, more patient, more available, he'll finally see your worth. But it's not your love he's rejecting. It's the discomfort of being truly seen. Because a man can't receive real love until he's ready to stop running from himself. And if you keep trying to be the exception to his pattern, you'll lose yourself trying to fix what you never broke. Here's the truth that stings before it sets you free. A man doesn't stay because you love him more. He stays when he realizes he could lose himself without you. And most men don't realize that until the woman who held him through his chaos lets go. You thought loving him harder would make him choose you. But real love doesn't come from proving your worth. It comes from knowing it. Because a man doesn't leave the right woman because she lacked something. He leaves because she made him face a part of himself he wasn't ready to change. And when you stop softening your light to meet his shadows, that's when everything shifts. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind of morning that felt too still, too heavy. The sunlight crept through the half-open blinds, casting soft stripes across the floor. The coffee she had made hours ago sat untouched on the table, growing cold. just like the space between them. He was on the couch, scrolling his phone, half listening, half here, just like he had been for months now. She stood in the kitchen doorway, watching him, her heart echoing with the same question she had asked herself 100 times, but never dared to say out loud. Why am I still here? She had done everything right. She supported him when his world was falling apart. She was his safe place when everything else was chaos. She stayed when he pushed. She softened when he hardened. She waited for him to come around to see her, not just look at her, but see her. To realize that the kind of love she offered wasn't ordinary, it was deep, whole, real. But he never did, at least not in the way she needed him to. Because no matter how much she gave, he stayed distracted, emotionally unavailable, distant, but not gone, not completely, just enough to keep her hoping, just enough to keep her trying. And then came the moment that changed everything. It wasn't a fight, it wasn't a dramatic scream or a slammed door, it was just a silence that settled like truth. She looked at him, then past him, at the life she thought she'd be building by now, at the version of herself she kept putting on hold for the hope of maybe. And she said it. I don't think you're capable of loving me the way I need to be loved. His eyes lifted from his phone, confused, like she had just spoken a foreign language. And maybe she had, because emotional fluency wasn't something he'd ever been taught. He didn't respond right away. He just blinked, searching for a script that didn't exist. She didn't cry. Not this time. Her tears had dried in all the nights she sat alone while he gave the best of himself to distractions, to other people, to everything but her. She didn't raise her voice. She just picked up her bag, placed her phone on silent, and walked toward the door. And this time, he didn't stop her. Not because he didn't care, but because, for the first time, he didn't know how to reach her. She wasn't leaving to get a reaction. She wasn't walking out to be chased. She was simply done. And in that silence, in that stillness, after the door clicked shut behind her, something sank in his chest. It wasn't anger, it wasn't confusion, it was fear. The fear of losing the one woman who never asked him to be perfect. Just present. The one who knew his flaws and still chose him. The one who stayed while he healed, waited while he figured things out, and never once made him feel like he was too broken to be loved. He stayed with women who challenged him with games, who made him feel alive through drama and confusion, because it was what he knew. It was what he was used to. Chaos had always felt more familiar than calm, but she was different. She didn't make him prove himself with tests. She made him feel safe, but safety had always scared him. Because safety requires vulnerability. It requires showing up, being seen. And now for the first time, she was gone. And the room felt emptier than it ever had. Because the wrong woman might light up the moment, but the right woman, she anchors the soul. And the moment she chose herself over him, he finally understood what he had lost. Not a girlfriend, not just a lover. A mirror that showed him who he could have been if he had only been ready to grow. You've spent nights staring at your phone, wondering what you could have done differently. You've replayed every moment, how kind you were, how supportive, how understanding. You lowered your voice when you wanted to scream. You stayed when you should have left. And still, he chose her, the woman who doesn't love like you do, the one who gives him less, demands more, and somehow he stays. It hurts deeply because you were the right one, and yet he left. But here's the shift no one teaches you, the one that sets you free. Being the right woman doesn't mean being the most available, the most giving, or the most forgiving. It means being the most self-respecting. See, men don't stay because you prove your worth. They stay because you know it. When a man is still lost in himself, when he hasn't yet faced his own pain, his own fears, his own broken patterns, he will gravitate toward relationships that reflect that confusion. And unfortunately, sometimes, it's the emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or chaotic woman that feels right to him, because that's the rhythm of dysfunction he's danced with his whole life. But here's the good news. You don't need to change him. You don't need to become harder, colder, or start playing games. What you need to do is shift the energy you show up with. That means you stop over-explaining yourself. You stop tolerating half-love. You stop showing up for someone who meets you with silence. You stop holding on to potential and start honoring the present. The moment you do this, not in anger, not to punish, but in truth, everything changes. You stop being the woman who waits and becomes the woman who chooses. You shift from, how can I make him love me, to, do I even want a man who needs to be convinced? Because a man can feel the difference between a woman who's trying to win him and a woman who's already won herself. When you stop performing, stop auditioning, stop shrinking just to keep him comfortable, you begin to radiate something rare, self-trust. And that energy, it's unforgettable. Nerve, Jane. Not to manipulate, not to provoke, but because it teaches him something about love he's never seen before. That real love does not beg to be seen, it simply refuses to be ignored. So don't be the woman who waits for him to recognize your value. Be the woman who's already standing in it. Let your boundaries speak louder than your pain. Let your silence be the answer where you used to explain. Let your peace become the standard you will not lower. Because the truth is, when you raise the bar within yourself, men will either rise to meet you or remove themselves from the room entirely. Either way, you win. And from that moment forward, you're no longer waiting to be chosen. You are the choice. She saw his car in the driveway and froze. Not because she was excited, not because she was scared, but because, for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel anything. Just a deep, quiet awareness that this version of her, the one who used to light up at the sound of his key in the door, was gone. She stepped inside, the room still smelling like his cologne and her absence. He looked up from the couch, surprised to see her without warning. There was something in his eyes. Curiosity, maybe, or caution. She used to chase that look. But not tonight. She didn't ask where he'd been. She didn't bring up the night he left without saying a word. She didn't demand to know who he was texting now, or why he stopped noticing the sadness in her eyes. She simply sat down, placed her keys on the table, and let the silence do what her words never could. Say everything. He opened his mouth to speak, to fill the space, to explain things she no longer cared to understand. But she stopped him with a single breath. "I'm not angry," she said. "I'm just not available anymore." The words came out steady, not cold, not cruel, just clean, like someone wiping the last fingerprint from a glass before putting it away for good. He blinked, confused, because she had always been the one who fought, the one who stayed, the one who cried and begged and reasoned, the one who clung to love like it was a lifeline, even when it felt more like a chain. But tonight, she was different. She no longer looked like the woman who wanted to be chosen. She looked like the woman who had finally chosen herself. And he felt it. That quiet panic, that unmistakable shift. Because something in him had always counted on her never waking up. Never walking away. Never realizing that the love she gave so freely was a currency far too rich for someone who paid in crumbs. He thought she'd wait, thought she'd still be there when he circled back, tired of the other woman who challenged him just enough to keep things interesting, but never enough to make him grow. He thought the right one would always be on standby, understanding, forgiving, holding the door open no matter how many times he slammed it shut. But now that door was closing, and not with a bang, not with a fight, with grace. Because that's how the right woman leaves, not to prove a point, but to reclaim her peace. She didn't make a scene. She didn't make him wrong. She didn't even ask for closure. She just walked to the door, took one last look at the man who could have had everything, and let him sit in the silence he used to weaponize. And he finally understood something. It wasn't that she wasn't enough. It's that she was never supposed to beg to be seen. She was a mirror, and he spent years avoiding his reflection. Now, the wrong woman may still be in his bed. She might still text him, still entertain the version of him that's convenient, that doesn't require depth, accountability, or truth. But she will be somewhere else, radiant, whole, no longer waiting to be recognized by a man who never learned how to see past himself. And he'll remember her, not because she chased, but because when she stopped chasing, everything inside him fell silent. Because some women don't leave to be missed. They leave to be found by the version of themselves they buried trying to love someone who didn't know how to stay. And the line that echoes long after her footsteps fade? Elle didn't leave because she wasn't enough. He left because she was the truth, and he wasn't ready to stop lying to himself.